Hello and welcome to this new tutorial, and welcome to our first evolution strategy technique, which is the simple evolution strategy. So actually it is so simple that it is not part of our optimizers here, of our evolution strategies here, but it clearly indicates the basics and the principles of how works an evolution strategy. So how does it work? The simplest evolution strategy is to sample a set of solutions from a normal distribution. So the set of solutions is a set of the parameters x and y, which are the two axes here in this simulation. And so a set of solutions x and y are sampled from a normal distribution. And you get, for example, 100 samples. So you will get 100 pairs of x and y here. And among the 100 samples, you will have some here, 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 or, close to a certain range of samples x and y's, because indeed they're sampled from a normal distribution, meaning that they will be concentrated around an average, and depending on the variant you will have some around it at a more or less far range. And so you sample a set of solutions x and y with a mean mu that is not fixed, but then with a fixed standard deviation. You will see that for the simple evolution strategy, the standard deviation will be fixed, but for some other strategies, we will vary the standard deviation, but we'll see that later. And so you sample the solutions starting from the origin, and then after you sample the solutions, you will get the best solution, meaning the one giving us the highest value of the function f of x and y. And then the mean, the new mean from which you're going to sample some new solutions, is going to be that maximum found. And that's why here on the simulation, well, you can see that the green point, we're going to wait that it starts again. Here we go. We're going to see that the green point is the mean, then the blue points are the samples, and from the samples, well, you get that maximum, which is the red point here. And so once you get the maximum, well, the mean becomes that maximum, and you're going to resample the solutions from the new mean. And therefore, since the mountain shapes are higher and higher, well, the maximum is getting closer and closer to the global maximum, the global maximum of the function f of x and y. And that's why the red dot here is getting closer and closer to the maximum. And so clearly we see that it works. However, if the mountains were sometimes higher and lower, like this, well, maybe that wouldn't work. So that's why the simple evolution strategy is not the best evolution strategy. And we will see that the solution to this, to the problem I've just mentioned, is to vary the variance, to vary the standard deviation, because right now it is a fixed standard deviation, as we can clearly see here. The samples of the solutions, meaning the blue dots here, are always in the same range around the green dot, which is the mean, right? And you will see, I can even show that to you right away. You can see that for some other, yes, here we go, for some other evolution strategy, well, the variance vary here, the standard deviation varies, and therefore the blue dots are concentrated in some different ranges around the mean. But we will see that later. And so that's the idea, and we clearly see how it works, how, we managed to find the optimal solution, the maximum. So that's the simple evolution strategy, but now let's move on to a more fundamental one, which is the simple genetic algorithm, right? It is based on Darwin's theory on evolution, and it is a fantastic algorithm. We will see that right away. So first of all, well, it's going to be the same for the simulation. The blue dots are going to be some sampled solutions. The red dot is going to be the maximum among the sampled solution, and you're going to see that the green dots are actually some what we call members of an elite population. Because what is the idea of the genetic algorithm? Well, the idea is to keep only 10% of the best performing solutions, after you sample the solutions. So you're going to sample the solutions which are going to give you all the blue dots, and then you're going to keep only 10% which are going to be the best performing solutions, which are the green dots. And then you let the rest of the population die. These are the non-survivors, they're little bears that we saw falling down to the ground. And first, let's get the right words. you have the parent population, which are the blue dots, and then you have what you call the offsprings, which are the green dots, you know, the survivors inheriting from the parents. And so in the next generation of the offspring, you're going to sample a new solution by randomly selecting two solutions from the survivors of the previous generation, you know, the 10% of the best performing solution, and recombine their parameters to form a new solution. And so now we're going to have a look at this other article, which will clearly explain that recombination of the parameters, which is called the crossover recombination. And there is also the mutation recombination. We will see that right away in this article, which clearly is the best explanation of the genetic algorithm you can find online. I've checked them all, and this one is indeed really good. So this article was posted by Vijini Malawawarchi, and it explains mostly the intuition of genetic algorithms, even including an example code. So, first of all, what do we see here? We see the parallel, of course, with genetics, with the genes and the chromosomes. So what you have to understand is that these will represent the parameters that we have to optimize. And so, you know, if you really want to do the parallel, you can imagine that we actually have two squares here with two figures, one for x and one for y. And so clearly, a genetic algorithm is a search heuristic inspired by Charles Darwin's theory of natural evolution, because indeed, we understood that we start from a parent population of parameters, and then, as the natural selection theory says, well, only the strongest will survive. That's the theory of natural selection. And in our case, in our simulation, well, the strongest are, of course, the solutions that fit best. You know, the solutions that are the most performing, meaning giving the highest scores or the highest values of f. So here are the 5 phases of a genetic algorithm. First, we start with the initial population. That's when you sample the blue dots here. That's the initial population. Then you define a fitness function, which in our case is clearly how high is going to be the value of the function f. And in our original case, the full world model, well, it's going to be how high is the expected cumulative reward. And so after you define the fitness function, well, you're going to select. You're going to select the best performing solutions, which are going to be the offspring. And then from the offspring, you're going to do that recombination called crossover. We're going to see that right away. And then another recombination, mutation. So let's start with the first phase, initial population. So indeed, you sample some solutions, x and y. So imagine that you only have two cases here, x and y. So that's the first solution, a second one, third one, fourth one. And all this is the population of your solution, you know, of your parameter solutions. And the parameter solution is the chromosome itself. And one element of the parameter solution, meaning x or y, is going to be, as we can see, the gene. And now that we understand this, we're going to very well understand the two recombination, crossover and mutation, because you will see that it will simply consist of swapping some genes among the chromosomes, meaning you're going to swap some x or y's among the set of parameter solutions. And so now let's move on to the next phase, the fitness function. So that's simply the fitness score given to the problem. So I remind that for our simulation, it's going to be the value of the function f, and for our world model, it's going to be the expected cumulative reward. And so you have your fitness function, and then you're going to proceed to the selection. And in the selection, you're going to select from the parents 2 pairs of individuals based, of course, on the fitness scores. And the individuals with the highest fitness scores will, of course, be selected for reproduction. As you know, in the theory of Charles Darwin's, the strongest species are the survivors. And now we can understand crossover, because among those selected pairs of individuals with the highest fitness scores, well, we're going to do that first recombination, which is the crossover. So how does it work? Well, you're going to find a random point in your parameter solution. So for example, here it is in the middle, and you're going to swap every gene at the left of that point, which is called the crossover point. You're going to swap the genes, meaning you're going to swap the parameters. So for example, in our simulation example, well, that crossover point is going to be between x and y, and that means between 2 selected parameter solutions, you're going to swap the x's. And in our real case example, meaning the full world model, well, of course, the matrix of the controller is much larger than just two parameters. Therefore, that crossover point is going to be selected at random in that matrix, and you're going to swap all the parameters at the left of that crossover point between the two selected parameter solutions. And so once you swap them, well, the genes are exchanged, and that's only until the crossover point. That's why here only the x's will be swapped. And then the new offsprings are added to the population. That's after the swap, and that simply gives you some new samples of the solution from which, again, you're going to select the best performing solutions. And then you have this other recombination, which is the mutation, which consists of flipping the genes inside a single parameter solution. So for example, here, well, that gene 1 was turned into a 0. That one was turned into a 1, and that one was turned into a 1. So that's a simple mutation. And the reason we're doing this is that it maintains diversity within the population and prevent premature convergence. All right, and then the rest is kind of the same as the simple evolution strategy. You're going to get closer and closer to that global maximum by, following the 5 phases of the genetic algorithm. All right, so before we move on to the next one, covariance matrix adaptation evolution strategy, well, I just want to show you where the genetic algorithm is in the code. Well, you will find it very easily. It is right here, it's a simple GA, and it is implemented from scratch with all the parameters. You have a lot of parameters with that same process, with first the ask method that gives us a set of candidate solutions, then the tell method that gives the list of fitness results back to the GA optimizer, and then the other important methods that, for example, returns the best set of optimized parameters. So if you're interested in this algorithm, well, you have the full code. We won't use them, of course, for our full world model because we have a much powerful one. But if you're dealing with some simpler problems, well, you can totally use that algorithm, and I'll explain later how to plug it into your model. All right, so let's take a little break, and in the next one, we'll tackle a much more challenging one, which is the covariance matrix adaptation evolution strategy, and which is the one we'll use for our full world model. So I can't wait to start tackling this with you, and until then, enjoy AI.